me your secrets! Tell me! Hi, my name is Kenny Hill, and for the past several weeks, I've been going just a little crazy over a game called Tunic. You've probably heard of Tunic. It's a cute game about a little fox in a big world. But what if I told you that it's also a game about eldritch horrors and human sacrifice and mind-bending puzzles that leave the game world and enter the real world? What if I told you that the end of Tunic is just the beginning of my descent into madness? Now, here are some of the things you've probably already heard about Tunic. It's a Zelda clone, right? Oh, but wait, there are Souls-like elements. How cool, how interesting, how refreshing. But the problem that I have is that many reviewers and gamers as well took Tunic and put it inside a box. And then they took that box and put it inside a slightly more relevant box. And then they put that box away, never to be heard from again. And so I am here today to smash that box wide open because that is what this game deserves. To be fair, I also fell for some of these tropes when I first saw Tunic at PAX West. I saw that cute little fox in his little tunic from a mile away and I said, I love Zelda games. I need to go check out that game. And so I did. I swung around my little sword in the demo, cutting down bushes, exploring a little bit of the overworld, and I had a great time. And I just thought to myself, I will wait. I will wait. And I did wait for 5 years to play this game.
It's been 84 years.
And now that I have, I've got to tell you, it's not a Zelda clone. I mean, it is and it isn't. See, the important thing to understand about Tunic is that it is constantly challenging the gamer's perspective. Andrew Schuldeis, the developer of Tunic, he is the anglerfish of the indie dev scene. And why do I say that? Because he knows that gamers are going to look at this game and think Zelda clone. And so your whole experience with the narrative and the lore and the mechanics of this game are going to be centered around that bias. And Andrew preys upon this bias really early on in the game. And the main vehicle through which he accomplishes this is the game manual. If you've been watching any other video analysis on Tunic, you've probably heard people singing the praises of this game manual because yes, it's cool. We miss having this accessory in our games. I am old enough to remember when the Super NES, N64, PlayStation games had these instruction booklets, and the art is spectacular. And when you get a used copy and somebody's left their little notes in it to help you find your way through this immense game world, through this confusing world that you are a stranger to, this is your Bible for this game. But it's a trap. It is absolutely a trap. And I fell for it too. I found my first pages, beginning your adventure, the controls of the game, tips and tricks. All of these things that if you're a gamer, if you have played games before, to even a casual standard, you probably have an understanding of how certain things work within a game. So you picked up this page too, maybe, and you thought to yourself, I already know this. I don't need this. Good thing too, because I can't read anything on these pages, or very little on these pages, because very little of this game manual is actually rendered in English, or at least English that I would be able to read.
How can you read this? There's no pictures.
Now, just because we can't understand everything in the manual doesn't mean that it doesn't have a lot of information to give the player. Once again, what Andrew is doing here is challenging the expectations of the player and having them shift their perspective. So instead of relying on explicit English instructions, you're supposed to look at the diagrams and the illustrations and process the information differently. Because everything you need is here in the instruction booklet. Everything you need to understand how this game is played and what it expects of you is staring you right in the face. And it's this kind of mystery that I think is such a hard balance to get right in games, but Tunic is one of the games that really does do it right. And if you ignore it, you're going to run into some problems. I know that I certainly did, because when I got about 5 hours into the game, I was met with this little dialogue box. What the heck? Are those fox skulls? See, my understanding of what Tunic was up to this point was still that it was a Zelda clone, that I just needed to collect the 3 shinies, that I needed to free the special person in order to defeat the big bad evil guy, who I guess I hadn't met yet, but just sort of assumed that I would at some point. But now I was starting to suspect that there was more going on in Tunic's world than I had been paying attention to. And the cool thing about Tunic is that you're going to keep having these aha moments throughout the rest of your playthrough, because what Andrew has done is he's taken those moments that you experienced in your childhood and repackaged them into Tunic. And he's done it in such a way that reignites that spark that we first experienced from when we first understood how games were supposed to be played. From the fact that the isometric world is hiding all of these shortcuts, and that certain knowledge would have been hugely instrumental earlier on in your playthrough if you had only known it existed. Probably the biggest aha moment for me was realizing that the big bad evil guy was simultaneously the special person I thought I was supposed to be saving. And it went about as well as you could have expected.
Fatality.
My whole understanding of the story was flipped 180 at this point. I thought that I knew what was going on here, and at this point I realized I truly did not know what I was doing. And that is what this game has kind of been trying to tell me this whole time, is that you're out here thinking that you know best when really you know nothing. But I was well and truly hooked by this point. I wanted to understand what my role was within this narrative. I wanted the knowledge of what this game was trying to tell me. I was ready to take my place in this world, whatever that may be. See, at this point, I realized that there were 2 different ways to get to the end. And so I had to choose what my path would be. It was the first time I really felt like I had a choice in this game. And so I chose to face the air as I now knew them. And it took me many, many tries. But I did it. I did it. And it was a challenge that I enjoyed. For as difficult as it was, I felt like I had earned it. And then I get to the end cutscene. And suddenly, I'm the one imprisoned. I'm the one who's going to be stuck in this interdimensional space. And the end credits roll. arguably the end of the game where most players would put the game down and step away and say, you know what, I beat it. But not me. Not me, because I still had so many questions. And then an option to retry. An option to go back to before my fight with the air and choose a different path, to choose a different fate. And so I did. I spent hours scouring the manual. I was looking at the manual in my spare time. I had pictures of it on my phone because I was obsessed, because I had never experienced puzzles integrated into an action-adventure game as well as Tunic had done it. And along the way, I discovered some really interesting things. I realized that there were so many secrets hiding in plain sight. Suddenly, the world that I had spent hours in looked totally different because of this information that I had learned. The mossy outlines on walls, the way the flowers grew, the way that the sandy beach was shaped, all of it had meaning now. And the game shifted from this Zelda clone with Souls-light elements into this immersive puzzle world. But eventually I did collect all of the manual pages. I was able to crack sort of the obvious big puzzle that had been sitting in the manual the whole time, and I was able to present it to the air and change both of our fates. No longer would either of us be imprisoned. We would be set free to live happily ever after. But I would not live happily ever after. And the reason that I would not live happily ever after is because in all that time that I was hunting down pages of the manual and finding these secrets, I found an even bigger secret. Part of it purely by accident, partly because I am an explorer by nature and I can't help poking my nose into places I don't belong apparently, and I was finding things that I had very little context for. Until suddenly, after looking at a particular page of the manual, I had tons of context for. I was getting these achievements, and there was a room where I could go and physically view the trophies for these Steam achievements, and I was like, that's cool. And then I looked a little bit closer at the manual, and the manual's like, hey, there's more of those. If you're paying close enough attention, you might see that those trophies that you found correlate to these hints of where to find them in the rest of the manual. So I started hunting those bad boys down, because at this point, even though I had already ended the game twice, I still had questions about the lore, about why are there creepy pink fox things hiding in these obelisks that seem to be powering the world? Why are there cultish foxes trying to kill me in this cathedral? What is the manual trying to tell me? But I was convinced at this point that there was a third secret ending, and that if I was able to find the rest of these secrets, that ending would be revealed to me. The problem is I'm not that smart. The problem is I was going to need help. And so, taking Andrew's advice to share wisdom, I did what any modern gamer would do, and I turned to the internet. At this point, it's already been a month since the game's released. There are smart people who have already translated the whole manual. They've got it up on Reddit. There are people who have translated all of the dialogue within the game. There are people who have built tools to help others do their own translations. And so that's what I'm looking for. That is the kind of help, the kind of nudge I need. So I start translating the bits and pieces of the manual that I need. And I find the trophies that I need to find. And this giant glowing orb appears within the trophy room. And I'm thinking to myself, this is it. And I prepare myself, I'm grabbing the items that I think I'm gonna need, the resources, and I get through that glowing portal, and this is what I find. And I have no idea what to do with this thing. I'm so confused. I am so confused. I just start pressing buttons and the buttons start doing something. And so I keep pressing the buttons and I'm like, what in the algorithmic bull hunky is this? Back to the manual, back to the community. I'm like, look, I found the thing. I just need a little nudge in understanding what the hint is trying to tell me. And they do a fabulous job. And so I input the solution to this puzzle and nothing happens. No fanfare. No nothing. Turns out it's like, if you know kind of puzzle. So I start deciphering what the solution is, and it turns out it's a website. And so my mind is blown. I love this, because I'm like, yes, I'm making progress. I'm moving forward. The translation tool and understanding how these runes become English becomes my ability to understand the next part of this puzzle. And I get to the website and I am faced with an eldritch horror. And at this point, I am diving into the community. I am reading up on the earliest gamers in that Discord and how within a few days they've completely decrypted, created the Rosetta Stone for the glyph script, how they had already found this website, how they were already seeing some of the deeper layers that were hidden inside the website. If you look at the spectral pitch display and how runes are hidden there and that those are translated. And then how they realized that not only were there runes and a message hidden within the audio of this website, but that very same audio could also be transcribed into these phonetic runes. And that blew open a whole other layer to this game, that those musical notes were trying to tell us something. And that's just sort of insane, right? That Andrew went through all this work to hide the solution to these Easter eggs at the very end of the game. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make any sense that the key to unlocking these musical Easter eggs would be hiding at the very end of the game. If that didn't mean something, Andrew, if that was not the way forward. All of these steps in the puzzling process have always given the player a way to move forward. And right here at the very end, so much information has just been revealed to us that it feels as if there has to be more to discover. From realizing that the runes were 3D in nature all along, to how musical notes were being used to encode messages this whole time, all while facing this huge question about the lore that is yet to be answered. But that is where the way forward ends, at least for now. We need somebody with the right perspective, the right player to come along and look at the world and look at the puzzles in a special way. That's what we need. Because I am not satisfied. And I think to myself, how do I save this world that Andrew created, that I care about now? Because I haven't. There is still a threat to this world because that world exists. And it's all about perspective, right? So maybe I have to change my perspective about what it means to be a hero. If the problem is that this world exists now and is threatened by these beings, by these eldritch horrors, then I think there's only one thing I can do.
I'm so sorry. It had to be done. It had to be done. It had to be done. I'm sorry. There's no other way.